So, there was a power outage last night. That was exciting. I got the party like it was 11.99. Um, well, I pretty much got everything straightened out to cut the ties with the oncologist. So I have spoken with my insurance company. I did not make it over to the primary care doctor's office. I was not feeling well. And I tried to handle that over the phone and I couldn't get through on the phone. So I ended up making some phone calls to the insurance company. That was probably the best route to take because I'd set up some arrangements with the insurance company that really needed to be set up because I forgot to set up a case manager with them. And I should have done that a long time ago. And now I have a case manager. So, this is a thing, and as an insurance agent, this is a thing that I should be talking about actually, and now I know what I'm going to talk about today. If you have a chronic medical problem, and this applies whether you have cancer like me or whether you have diabetes like me, although my diabetes is like super well controlled. Whether you have some other kind of a chronic medical condition like lupus or something, I don't know if lupus falls into that category, but it's definitely worth checking into. Any kind of a chronic medical condition, you should ask your insurance company if you qualify for a case manager. And the first customer service representative that I spoke with had no clue what I was asking about, and she started quoting me copays for a skilled nursing facility, and I was like, no, 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 that is not what I'm asking about. It has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm asking about. I am not going to a skilled nursing facility. And just so you know, if you're not familiar with these terms, a skilled nursing facility is a rehab center where you go if you are recovering from a surgery. And it's kind of like a hospital, but it's like hospital light. Like if you had heart surgery and then they put you in ICU at the hospital, and then they say they're moving you to a rehab center for a few weeks, that's a skilled nursing facility. That is not what I was calling about. I'm at home. I can take care of myself. I don't really need a uh, nursing, like a home health attendant. I wouldn't mind one. I don't really need that. I'm able to take care of myself. I wouldn't mind if somebody like took out my trash. I mean that I wouldn't object to it. I wouldn't object to somebody doing my dishes for me, but I'm able to do that. I do have help from the city with my garbage. They do take care of that. So I do get a little bit of assistance with that stuff. That's a service the city provides. I take it to my driveway, and the city comes up to the trash cans, and they take it to the curb and all that stuff, and then they bring the trash cans back up. So I get a little bit of help on that, and that I had to go over and get a notarized statement to to get those kind of services. And it's kind of weird because I am like, other than the cancer, I'm pretty healthy for a 55-year-old. Uh, when I was at the cardiologist, I had a 91% on my stress test, which is better than average for someone my age. But yeah, I'm dying. So that's like, there's I'm really healthy for somebody who's dying, but that's not anything to do with the fact that I've got like big giant tumors growing in my lady parts. So, and that's really bad because, eventually it's going to spread to my brain or something, or, who knows. It's very bad. And, so I needed to call my insurance company and arrange about that so that they have me going to oncologists, and if I need somebody to come out my house or whatever and take care of me or whatever, I have that. If I need to go on hospice, I have that. And I have certain religious beliefs that I need to basically fight it out to the end. And even if I'm on life support and everything, and that's you know um my religion until pretty recently didn't allow for organ donation, and I've like fought that. And personally, I think if somebody can benefit from my organs and it saves a life, then I interpret my religious belief to be that if I can save somebody's life, I have an obligation to do that. I think there's a conflict in that. That burying my intact body, when it can save somebody's life, there's a problem there. But they did discuss that, and the ruling was changed on that. And I think in Judaism there are leniencies, just like there are. I don't live in a vacuum. I know there is a lot of controversy about what is going on in the Middle East right now, and we don't all agree about what is going on over there. And there are people who are very liberal in Judaism that support what Prime Minister Netanyahu did. And there are members of the very Orthodox community that disagree with what he did. And there are members that are very liberal that, you know, um, also disagree with what he did, obviously. So there are people on all sides of that issue. And I think what was most eloquently stated was there was a young man that said that when someone in Israel does something like that, it puts other Jews in danger outside of Israel when they behave in a manner like that. And I agree with that. There have been a huge there's been a huge spike in anti-Semitic attacks since Israel started behaving the way it has in response to the October 7th attacks. And the behavior that Israel has exhibited since then has not been appropriate to what happened then. And at risk of getting too political about it, I'll leave it at that. It was not proportional to what occurred. It's been very disproportional. And I'll just leave it at that. I do not know why that computer keeps putting these notifications on there. I don't want that junk. So, the reason I bring that up is that there are different views about, how to handle uh, illness that could be fatal. whether to just kind of throw your hands up and go, what can I do? Or whether you should fight it off as long as possible. And generally, the accepted thing is you should fight it as much as possible. Do whatever you can do to get better because you're supposed to be on this earth as long as possible. And you have an obligation to maybe accomplish something in this life. And if you gave up too early, maybe you didn't do what you were born to accomplish. And I've had a lot of days when I felt really depressed and wanted to just exit backstage right, I guess would be a way to put it, to avoid the censors. I've really had days. I do suffer from depression. And because of my epilepsy, my neurologist took me off of my antidepressants. Um, I was on antidepressants and I was taken off of them by a neurologist because they react to my seizure medicine. So this was not something that I was like, oh, I feel better, I'm going to stop taking them. No, it was not like that. I was taken off of them by brain specialists. So, and it's been a very difficult journey to emotional health without them, especially after my mother died. It's been very difficult. And, you know, I thank God for my iPod, which no longer works, and that's been difficult. But that little item really helped me so much. Just being able to listen to music when I felt bad, and it's cheered me up so much, and it makes my endorphins, go up and everything. That little item has really helped me more than any medication, and I am not advocating using music in place of your medically prescribed medication if you have that. I'm saying it helped me. Um, but I have had days when, I used to live in San Francisco and I found it how to get to that that landmark. I've had days that were that bad. And I think you know which landmark I'm talking about. I've had days like that. And, I actually have had days that were so bad that I, cleaned up my apartment and, got everything in order and planned out how to get over there, and all of that. And was feeling so bad that I did that. And then I actually twisted my ankle really bad and had to go to the emergency room for it. And that's what kept me from doing it. I was planning to do that. So I have struggled very badly with depression in my life, you know. And a few years later, I was working for an insurance company, taking homeowners insurance claims, among other things. And I got a phone call from Moore, Oklahoma, right before the tornado. And I was able to help a family get into a hotel using their homeowners insurance. And they were able to get the safety before an E5 tornado hit where they were. So, yes, I was able to save a family of four from that tornado that hit afterwards. So that's why that is why I twisted my ankle that day. I was on crutches and everything, and it makes me think of, that scene in It's a Wonderful Life when he has to jump after the angel to save the angel's life. And because he did that, he didn't, you know, we all know how the movie goes. But yeah, those kind of things, when that happens, it prevents you from doing something else. And then you're around to save someone else later on and everything. That absolutely happened to me. And I have been in positions where I have been able to do that. And so you never know when, when you just barely have your life saved, that later on you're able to help someone else. You never know when that happens. And that's why I'm convinced that, this is a right thing in my religion, you know. And I could have died in, I could have died when I was supposed to go in there for that hysterectomy. I could have died then. And I wouldn't be here saying this. And maybe somebody watches this video and sees this and they're contemplating unaliving themselves and they see this and they change their mind. Maybe that was the reason that all of that happened. And I hope if I'm able to change somebody's mind that this makes a difference. Maybe that's the reason I'm alive, and maybe I'll fall asleep tonight and don't wake up. I don't know, but I haven't been feeling well. But I think, as long as we're alive, there is a reason for us to be here, and we serve some kind of a purpose, and we don't know what it is, and we never know when we're going to make a difference that saves somebody else's life. And I've worked in call centers for a big portion of my career, and I have been able to help people and save people's lives doing things that were quite mundane. And I had a phone call where I was not able to save two lives, and that call haunts me. And I spoke with a young lady that has a job that I had like 28 years ago. Um, and she said, "Well, I'll keep you in my prayers." And I told her, "You're going to do better than that today. You're going to help me save my life because you're going to find me a list of other doctors. That's what you're going to do. You're going to do your job. And you're always going to remember this phone call because I had calls like this when I did what you do. And I still remember those phone calls. You're going to do your job, and you're always going to remember this phone call." I know her name. And that's that's the, what happens sometimes when you work in a call center. And sometimes you get in other jobs where you have an unbelievable amount of power. You know, um, I definitely believe that most people peak out in their careers when they're in their late 20s and early 30s. I, I certainly did. And I have that ENTJ personality type. I was in the gifted program in school. And I stayed employed when a lot of people were unemployed during the big recession in 2008 to 2012, that time period. I was still working when a lot of people were not. Was I working really good jobs? That's debatable. But I was working. But I will tell you that I had an amazing job. I always wanted to work for Gannett. I used to draw their logo on my notes in communication classes, and I was offered a permanent job working for them. Before I moved to Israel, I had a temp assignment working in their supply division. I reported to the president of that division, and they did offer me a permanent position there. And I had to coordinate all the shipments of newsprint. That's back when people read newspapers, and newspapers are gigantic back in those days. It was in 2000. They were huge. I couldn't hold a newspaper. I was like, these things are too big. And one day, my boss came in and she was like, I have this really messed up spreadsheet. I was wondering if you can fix it. And I was bringing my laptop computer. I just bought a new one. And because there was a problem with the workstation, somebody had hacked it or broke it or something. So I was working on my own computer, and and I had to get all these faxes out every month to get all these orders in, and I was seeing how many train loads of trees were being shipped in from Canada and these other places to make all these newspapers for USA Today and these other newspapers they own. I looked at it and everything. I was like, if you make the newspapers a little bit smaller so someone like me can hold it, you can shave off like, a couple centimeters because they were converting over a metric. You can save about 2 trainloads of trees to every single city just by making the newspapers a little bit smaller. And I was like, do you mind if I do that? They were like, oh, go for it. That's going to save us a lot of money. What they didn't know was my dad was into solar energy back in the 70s, and I got taken to all these little seminars for green energy and everything when I was little, because at the 70s, hippie, No, my dad actually was really good friends with an engineer at NASA, and he was really trying to design this thing that was like a steam turbine that ran on solar and everything. And I don't understand how it worked and everything, but I did have all these little comic books about how the world was going to be saved with green energy and everything. And so I read this stuff, and I was like, oh, I want to recycle aluminum and everything. And, so I was interested in that. And so I decided to make the newspapers a little bit smaller so that I could save like a train load, or I mean a car load or two. They're called car loads. They were like a whole train car um, of trees to each printing press, and they had like 30 or 40 different printing presses all over the country and Canada and in England. And so it was a lot of trees. And so I was able to do that. And they offered me a permanent job. The thing was, I was already planning to move to Israel. This was 25 years ago. And I already had my ticket purchased, and I was already in the process of like packing all my stuff up and all that. And I still wanted to think about it. And I wonder all the time what would have happened if I would have stayed there. Well, would have watched an airplane fly into the Pentagon from my office that day. I know that. I had a view of it. That would have been a terrifying time to be in the country. But I was in that place at that time, and I was able to do that. And I think he put me in that place at that time to be able to do that. And so I do believe that I was able to make an impact on the worldwide carbon footprint by being in that location at that time. So you never know what you're able to do. And I'm still around, and I feel like there's still some purpose for me being around. And I listen to my intuition, and sometimes I get a feeling that there's something I should not be doing, or someplace I should not be. And I listen to that intuition. And I pay attention to my surroundings because sometimes, if you notice something isn't right, you need to watch that as well. One time I was in Tel Aviv. My mother wanted me to pick up little, these little camels at a souvenir shop. She had sent me some money to get them for her, and that's where they sold them. And I saw these old men jump up from their brunch and run, and that was not a normal or good thing. And I got up and ran too, and then I asked what was going on. Um, and there was somebody who was doing a bad thing, and then there were some military people who neutralized the bad thing. And this was 25 years ago. It was like 24 years ago, and that's paying attention to what's going on around you. It's good to be intuitive and listen to that feeling inside, but it's also good to use your eyes and watch what's going on around you too. Don't always live in a fantasy realm, and don't make up things about what you think is going on in the world around you. You need to live in reality and pay attention to reality. You know, uh, just because your imagination tells you that this and that is going on does not mean that's what's going on. You need to ask people. I've run into a lot of situations where people just they imagine that this is going on with that person or that is going on, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes. One of my friends is trying to become a Facebook influencer. God only knows why. I don't understand it. You know, I don't know what's going to be accomplished by doing that. I have a communications degree from Boston University. I'm wearing a Red Sox shirt, but that has never caught my interest. I've looked into it, and I don't see where there's money to be made doing that unless you already own a business. But I have several Facebook friends that are trying to do that, and I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish with that. But um, she's been trying to increase her engagement, and I I don't know what the purpose of it is. I don't. But I know what kind of posts get engagement. They're cat posts and their history posts. Otherwise, it's just posts about, you know, posts about I need prayers for so and so. Those are the posts that get engagement because people are kind of simple minded. And I could go on there and beg people to pray for me for my medical condition. I don't do that because, to be honest, I know a lot of people don't believe in the same aspect of God that I do, and it would bother me to ask for such a thing. What Jews believe is not what Christians believe. It's not. Christians like to think we believe in the same God. We don't. And I know that's going to offend a lot of people, but you know, I think that the Roman Catholic religion is very, very similar to the Orthodox Jewish religion. There are a lot of similarities. And I think that's, because they certainly incorporated a lot of the belief systems and everything. But when you start talking about evangelical and all that, no. No, 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 no. And I could go into a whole lot of reasons why, and I'm not going to. If you want to know about that, you do your own research about it. And um, that research needs to come from Jewish sources, not not people like Franklin Graham. They're not going to be honest about it. Um, but I'm not going to go there. That's not. It's just not something I want to go into. So I don't do that for engagement, and I don't have a cat. I really, really would love to have a cat. That absolutely would not be an ethical thing for me to do at this point. How fair would that be to the cat? Get them all attached to me, and then maybe a year from now, a cat needs to find another owner. Um, I have to think about those things. Um, my friends have been very supportive and everything. There's definitely, if I need an emotional support animal, there's definitely one at my disposal. Uh, that's a weird way to put that, but um, I know this animal very well, and I can go play with that animal if I'd like to. Um, it's not a cat; it's a dog. But you know, there is a cat that hangs around in the front yard, and I leave when I make fish. I leave the skins out there for the cat to eat. I know which cat it is and everything. So there's we have an understanding, and he comes by and picks up the fish skins, but I don't want him coming too close to the house because I think he might belong to one of the neighbors, and I don't want him thinking this is his new home or something like that. And I definitely do not want him sleeping on my car wheels. Um, and that's another story, but I don't want to go into that. So, anyway, but getting back to what I was talking about, so I have a friend who is playing with engagement, trying to boost her engagement on Facebook, And so she actually had a legitimate post that she was asking for people to pray for a situation. And I jumped to the conclusion that this was another one of her engagement posts, and it was not. And that hurt her feelings. And that's where it helps to discuss things before making accusations. You know, the intuition will create situations that play out. Well, this thing was because of an engagement farming. This thing was because of engagement farming. That was because of engagement farming. So, no, that was not. You know, that went off the thing. You see, that was actually not because of engagement farming. It was because she had a legitimate request over a legitimate situation. And I didn't know that. I just assumed it, but it was incorrect. And that's where it gets into making assumptions about people. And I've had family members do that. That it was very damaging that they did that, because I'm not in contact with those family members anymore. And I'm not talking about the cousin, I'm talking about somebody closer related to me. You know, is something that you should not do. You should not make up scenarios in your mind about why someone did something, what their motivations are, any of that. You should discuss what you what you saw and ask why it happened. And don't be accusatory about it. You know, um, and it's very important to do that and have open communication with people rather than make assumptions about people. My mother called it jumping to conclusions, and my father did that a lot. The thing is, my mother did too. My father still does it. He's still alive, so you know, it, it's and that's probably why they had so many fights. They fought constantly. So it doesn't make for a happy marriage. It might be a long lasting marriage, might actually last until death do us part, kind of a thing. But is it a happy marriage? No. You're not going to be happy if you are constantly making assumptions about someone without communicating. And that's not a good thing to do. Communicate. Don't do what I did to my friend and accuse. And in scripture, who is the accuser? It's Satan. Satan assumes and accuses. You don't want to be that. That's literally what ha-satan means, is the accuser. Um, so but there's always a purpose for you to be around, and you don't know what it is. You might not know until the very last day why you've been around. Maybe you were meant to bring people together. Maybe you were meant to discover something. Maybe you were meant to fix something. Maybe you were meant um, to save somebody's life on the last day that you were alive. You don't know. And, my friend that I was telling about, um, about the apparition, he touched so many people's lives, and I don't think he realized it. And, he felt so bad about himself. He drank a lot and ruined his liver. That is how he died. His liver was destroyed, and he touched so many people's lives. And everybody had some kind of a story about him. You don't know what your purpose is in life. You have to stay around as long as possible. You don't know who you're touching by staying around and who you're going to help. I'm shocked how many people have cancer where I work and other chronic diseases. And, that's just kind of a surprise to me. You don't think about that with these 800 numbers that you call to activate your credit card. You don't think about that. That maybe the people that are taking these calls, these stupid offers that they're making on a phone call, you don't think about that's somebody that's maybe working part-time because they are in chemotherapy. Maybe they need something a little easy to do. And I will say, I had a phone call, and this woman just needed to open up to somebody that seemed like a total stranger, but I knew who that woman was. She was one of my neighbors when I was a child. And I knew the whole story about her family. Um, and she has a unique name. And I saw that name, and I was like, and that name came up. And so she was on the phone with me for about half an hour, and she needed to talk because she just went through a death in the family. And I'm not going to say too many details, but it was really traumatic what she had gone through. And she needed to talk to someone, and I listened to her for half an hour. And she told me all the stuff about what had been going on in her family and the recent stuff. And I listened to this, and she just needed to talk to someone, and she was just really, it was an awful situation and everything. And the thing is, when I was little, there was an incident in the neighborhood, and I knew the other half of the story. And that was some of the juiciest dirt in that neighborhood, and it involved her. It was a dirty, nasty story. And I realized that woman was a human being, and talking to her, temperament wise, she was not very different from me, but her family was very, very screwed up. Much more screwed up than mine. and what she had been through and what she watched her family go through and everything's far worse than anything that happened in my family. And she needed someone to talk to. So she opened up to this random stranger that was activating her credit card, who didn't she didn't know was the little girl that lived a few houses away from her when she was a teenager and heard that awful story. You never know who is answering your phone call when you activate your credit card. You never know. You absolutely never know. And the company I work for uses that as a place to put people so they don't have to lay people off and pay unemployment benefits. And we're all aware of that. We're all overqualified for that job. We're all struggling to pay bills because it doesn't pay enough, but it's better than not working because I need my health insurance, and I think a lot of other people do too. So that is kind of what is going on there and everything, and it's you know you never know who you're talking to. I've had other ones that I'm like, I know that person. They didn't remember who I was. Like, I know that person. That one was in my gifted class in seventh grade. That one hung up on me, but yeah, I get people that I know from time to time, or that I didn't personally know, but I knew who they were because they lived on my street when I was a little girl, you know, and just weird things like that, you know. But you never know who you need to talk, who needs to talk to you, who needs to unburden themselves to you. You never know those kind of things, and because of that, you have an obligation to live as long as you can live. You need to keep breathing as long as you can breathe, and you don't give up. You don't give up. That's why my religion is like that. And life is painful. There's pain in life. There is pain, but you have to stick around because maybe you had to put up with that so that you could your soul could atone for that last thing. Like I said, Jewish people do not believe the same things Christians do. You have to earn your way into the afterlife. You don't say a magic formula and get forgiven for things. If you did something bad to someone, you can apologize to them for it. You don't say a magic verse and then you get to be an a-hole that did everybody, and you're magically forgiven. And my cousin and her family think that they can just get away with that stuff. No, doesn't work like that. See, that's why mm, I am trying not to disparage people's religions and stuff, but I really don't know that many evangelicals because they kind of have like cut me off. Most of my friends are either like Catholic or Catholic Light, which is like, what, Lutheran or Episcopalian or whatever, Presbyterian or whatever. And most of my friends are Catholic. The ones that are not Jewish. So, okay, like, there's a sense of ethics in most religions and everything. And I'm not saying the big M. And the big M, I actually know a little bit about, not as much as I probably should. My grandmother was born into the big M, and she left it because she didn't want me put in an arranged marriage, and she didn't want to wear a thing that covered her neck and all that stuff, And I'm covering my head. I am not married. This is not for religious reasons. It's because my hair looks weird after chemo. It has nothing to do with religion. Um, I'm actually, as a single woman, I am forbidden from wearing a head covering, actually, normally. But this is because I am self conscious about what my scalp looks like. That's the only reason I'm wearing it. And, so, you know, and I have left out discussions about the big M uh, in relations to Judaism because that is a monotheistic religion, and it is actually very similar to Judaism. As far as like beliefs, Jewish people do not believe in jihad, and that's actually a big difference. It's is a major difference. So that gets into nitpicky stuff and everything, but in general, it's very similar. If you are Christian, you know about Sadducees and Pharisees. Like Judaism comes out of the Pharisee tradition, and the Big M, they come out of the Sadducee tradition. So that's kind of the difference and everything. And then, that's complicated and everything. So anyway, so in Catholicism, is very similar, like ethically and everything, to Judaism. And for example, we have confessions, and we do them once a year. And the day of the year that we do them over and over again. And they kind of spread it out over the year. So that's a difference. And then they their beliefs about angels and demons are identical to ours, and their beliefs about patron saints, that's pretty much identical. We have different ones. Their beliefs about principalities are identical. So those kind of things, they're pretty much like identical and everything. Fish is not meat, that kind of stuff. So, you know, the books are the same, except, they added some new ones. So, in that sense, there's a sense that if you do something bad, there is a sense of guilt over doing something bad, and you don't treat people in an evil way, and then think you can get away with it. Um, Unless you're a certain prime minister, I guess, or, and there certainly have been Catholic dictators that were evil. Um, all you have to do is go back about 80 years. You can find a few. More recent than that, too. So that kind of a thing, there's it's not that it's not that different, but in general, you're expected to behave a certain way ethically, and you don't just magically go in your bedroom and get on your knees and uh, communicate directly to the creator of the universe and say, um, I'm going to use you as a proxy to actually behaving correctly towards another human being. And and then that makes everything okay. It's not like that. So, whereas I think some religions encourage people to do that. So in that sense, certainly if you have if you have hurt someone with your behavior and everything, that's more of a thing where you have an obligation to apologize to them and make amends for it and serve the community and things like that. So it's a little bit different. I don't know if that makes sense or anything. I'm kind of rambling about that, and I really don't intend to make this in a religious monologue. But that is, it is important to me in that sense that I can't sit there and make this decision that I'm just going to finish my existence early and just say I'm done. You know, I can't do that. And whether I feel really depressed and I'm just like tired of dealing with everything, or whether I'm in a lot of pain and it's just unbearable pain. And there have been days when I've had chemo when it's been just unbelievably uncomfortable. I when I was first taking tramadol for my um, pain, I was so sick from that. I was just going back and forth to the bathroom and vomiting and vomiting and vomiting, and it was much worse than when I'd started chemo. Um, you know, but it's just not even a question of do I give up? You know, the doctor told me I can put you in hospice today. Do you want to do that? That was not even a question that had occurred to me. I don't want to go on hospice. My mother went on hospice. My mother had the absolute worst diagnosis, especially to her. My mother valued intelligence above anything else on the planet. My mother had 168 IQ. My mother had Alzheimer's disease. Of course, she wanted to go on hospice. If I got diagnosed with that, maybe I would consider it. Maybe I'm lucky that I have such a lethal kind of cancer at a younger age because I probably will never live long enough to worry about that. The idea of losing my mind, you know, because I'm pretty sure my father has it, and that's almost a guarantee that I will get that at some point if I live that long. So maybe I'm lucky. I'm seeing signs of an early manifestation of it in my younger sibling. Maybe it's just a long COVID. I don't know, but it that's something different, you know. But to give up on life, no. I need to I need to stick around as long as possible because I never know when I might be the one to talk someone out of unaliving themselves, or the one to direct someone to some resources that they need to save their life, or the one to give somebody encouragement that they need to get through a death in their family. You know, I never know when I'm the one that needs to be the one to do that. And if my older sister is the one watching, if my older sister happens to be watching this, the lady that called me at work is the one whose mother got taken away in the ambulance. Don't leave any comments about that. You know, and I know. And there's a whole lot more that happened after that. That woman's been through enough in her life. Um, so um, that's kind of. I didn't really have a topic in mind when I hit the record button, but I guess that's what it is. Stick around as long as you can, and get yourself a caseworker if you don't have one yet. If you have an HMO, because there's a thing called a chronic special needs plan, and you're entitled to be switched to it if you have cancer, if you have diabetes, and a lot of other very significant diagnoses. By significant, I mean, now don't quote me on this, stuff like lupus. What I am not talking about is epilepsy. I know that is not considered a disability. And I don't think autism fits into that either. Um, that is so over, neurodivergence is so over diagnosed and over reacted to in this country. Um, very, very over reacted to. You can work with ADHD. You can work with a lot of kinds of, certainly HSP. That's so common. You know, it's difficult having to hear a phone ringing all the time. I won't lie, especially when you work on a phone. But you can cope with it. It's not going to kill you. So no, you don't get put on a chronic special needs plan for having neurodivergence, to my knowledge, because they took everybody off Medicaid for it a few years ago. So those kinds of things, no. But stuff like cancer, stuff like diabetes, yeah, you can ask for a caseworker, a case manager. So I know that applies to HMOs. I don't know about EPOs, which is a weird hybrid kind of an insurance. So it's worth asking about. Call your insurance company and ask. So I guess that's my thought for the day. And this is the longest video I've made. So have a good day. And yeah, this is recorded on a Saturday. I don't like to do that, but I think the little bottle is running out of sand. So I'm trying to get as many of these up as possible. So have a good day and enjoy the new week. Bye bye.